Guys, Keccak, co-founder here at Nectar, basically building out uncensored and immersive AI companions. It's kind of separated into like several different pillars. The first one is fully generative AI companions. So you'll kind of go on our website, you can make a male companion, a female companion, all hyper-realistic. Second one is kind of targeted more towards like the anime crowd, so that includes like waifus, husbandos. Third one is interesting, it's like fantasy storytelling, so like fan fiction. This is huge in different areas across the world, right? East Asia, very big region that kind of is really into this sort of fan fiction sort of stuff. We're kind of the main platform that's kind of like powering all of this stuff, hoping to bring things on chain and kind of allow people to immerse themselves more into an immersive AI companion.
Hey, what's up? This is Zach here, the GM podcast. Excited to talk with my anonymous counterpart over here. So before we kick things off, if you want to, or not, I guess, introduce or don't introduce yourself, whatever you want to do.
Hey guys, Keccak, co-founder here at Nectar, basically building out uncensored and immersive AI companions.
Amazing. So what is that? What is an uncensored AI companion? Tell me the lowdown.
Yeah, so I think the easiest way for people to kind of think about it is basically character AI, but PG-13 and then kind of like on-chain. Basically kind of what we're building out now is a permissionless and uncensored platform to kind of power all of these immersive AI experiences. It's kind of separated into like several different pillars. The first one is, of course, fully generative AI companions. So you'll kind of go on our website, you can make a male companion, a female companion, all hyper-realistic. Second one is kind of targeted more towards like the anime crowd, so that includes like waifus, husbandos, also full generative AI. Third one is interesting, it's like fantasy storytelling, so like fan fiction. This is huge in different areas across the world, right? East Asia, very big, region that kind of is really into this sort of fan fiction sort of stuff. And the fourth one is kind of just like avatars or like real life replicas of people that we've obtained rights to. So we're kind of the main platform that's kind of like powering all of this stuff, hoping to bring things on chain and kind of allow people to, immerse themselves more into their AI companions.
So what do you mean by you say PG-13? Like it's like, is it like can you explain it like your boyfriend, your girlfriend kind of a thing?
Yeah, I think a lot of people
like you, kind of? Or not you, her.
Her is a good one that we always get referenced to. Yeah, a lot of people use it for like romantic and emotional intimacy, boyfriends, girlfriends, lovers of all genders. That's definitely like a primary use case that a lot of people have found. And what I mean kind of PG-13 plus is it's we are built on open source fine-tuned models. And that's kind of why you also need this element of decentralization, right? Because we have these open source fine tunes that allow you to talk a lot more freely compared to, I guess, like centralized counterparts.
Like ChatGPT.
Yeah, like ChatGPT. Like we allow you to talk about religion, sex, politics, and kind of give relatively unbiased answers. It allows users to form much more close, intimate bonds compared to, if you were to talk to any sort of other AI agent. On our platform, users are kind of able to inject different personalities. Users are also able to kind of make their own persona whenever they talk to these companions. So let's say, for example, persona 1 is, let's just say like a 30-year-old man, right? Like he's like interacting with, I don't know, a 25-year-old male. Let's just female. Let's call her Alice. Let's say all of a sudden, like for whatever reason, you want to switch it up, right? You want to be like a 50-year-old gentleman that's like suffering with like, I don't know, terminal illness, but you're still interacting with the exact same companion. She's always going to respond differently than if, you were kind of just like strangers meeting for the first time, So people can kind of mix and match these different personas. They can also mix and match different fantasies. And that's kind of what we've noticed to be, one of our biggest drivers for growth.
That's amazing. So where does the sort of like blockchain part of it come in, or Web3?
Yeah, so philosophically, I kind of alluded to this earlier. You do want to eventually decentralize portions of this inference to not, be censored, right? So that's kind of like number one. You kind of want to allow inference to kind of happen across like a more distributed network rather than just rely on a centralized provider that could one day just kind of like shut you off. The next thing is actually something that we started to believe in more, which is the concept that agents are fundamentally first-class citizens on the blockchain, which means that you can actually transact financially. And what that looks like for immersion for a lot of these companions is like you can essentially just buy whatever you want, especially as you've noticed a lot more infrastructure is being built towards stablecoin payments, towards transacting with, using on-chain currencies, but buying real life items. And I think agents, such as our companions, are perfectly suited to kind of bring all this stuff to life. So for example, you know how Base allows you to kind of, use USDC on the Base ecosystem to buy coffee, right? Like that's kind of like been the biggest thing that they've been pushing forward. You can imagine with like embedded wallets, with smart accounts, with using us as a paymaster, we can, buy that coffee, and then we somehow just need to figure out the delivery, right? But that's not too hard once you start building up this economy.
Cool. So kind of like, getting back into what you're talking about and sort of you mentioned like the coffee on base. So what you're saying is like, could you ask sort of your AI model to buy you a coffee? Is that kind of what you're going with that? Or I'm trying to
Yeah,
understand.
that's definitely part of it. Basically, in a nutshell, without revealing too much, we have, basically users, they interact with our companions a ton, right? Because they message back and forth, you build up this emotional bond. I get a coffee and a bagel every single morning, right? And like, after a while, if you believe that your companion really is kind of like your friend per se, then you're kind of texting them like, hey, like I'm getting kind of hungry, like can you do da 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 for me, right? And it knows like this is your morning routine. It knows that when you're kind of groggy or kind of tries to wake you up just by texting you like GM, that it can also do that for you, right? So that's kind of like our job here at Nectar is to create this sort of underlying immersive AI. Obviously, there's a ton of work that we're doing behind the scenes such that it's not complicated for the end user, right? All they have to do is kind of like talk and interact as they would a normal human being, to be honest.
Makes sense. How does, because I think privacy is obviously a huge concern in crypto, Web3. How do you guys look at like privacy in this setting? Like in terms of the interaction, is it, how private is it? What does that sort of look like?
Yeah, so right now we store everything just on encrypted databases, but there's a lot of new computational techniques. We're going to be partnering with a couple people to kind of like, explore the private computation space. So looking at different techniques such as FHE, just to kind of make sure that data remains private. You can actually run, private computation so that you can, understand that the inference call was made without revealing too much information if we did decide to put inference on chain, but otherwise like data is kept pretty private. We understand that people are having some pretty, heavy conversations, and we do our best to kind of maintain that.
That's awesome. Love to hear that. How do you guys, because I mean, this is obviously the question that probably, I mean, I understand that ChatGPT is censored and stuff, but like what happens if they just released an uncensored version or something? Like how do you compete with that?
Yeah, so I've followed Sam for a while. You do see that OpenAI does believe in like, eventually having adults interact responsibly, but this is something that we've already focused on early on, right? I think OpenAI is and Anthropic and all these other companies that are eventually trying to develop AGI are going to more push towards frontier tech that way, rather than us, where we're more focused on personalized AI agents, right? And that kind of starts by us already having that first mover advantage where people are interacting with our companions in a much more visually appealing manner than just like, oh, I'm going to open up my ChatGPT app and talk the exact same way, right? Of course, there's a lot of work for us to kind of be done, but I think our initial wedge has just been this like emotional attachment because like you already have this habit of like kind of like texting a friend, and this friend is someone that you've either designed yourself or kind of like browsed on the community page and found and developed some sort of attraction towards.
Awesome. And kind of like how's it been going so far? Like how's the adoption been, or what stage of you guys are you guys in development? Love to learn more there too.
Yeah, we have like around 1 million-ish users. We raised like a pretty small round several months ago. Mechanism and Heritage led that round. But yeah, just continuing that rocket ship growth.
1 million users is impressive for
Yeah, and all
that's
organic.
crazy.
Never farmed. I think our community is strong just because we've actually taken great care to actually build a product and kind of distribute it in a variety of mechanisms that people are actually looking for, right? Some of our first use cases were obviously kind of like in the more like explicit sector, but we slowly started to expand away from that, which is why I mentioned that there are the four tenets that we're kind of building towards, like, right? Like the anime stuff, the fan fiction stuff, like not all of that necessarily has to be super explicit, but it's still extremely sticky. And that's kind of like why we're, looking to kind of continue this growth and hopefully raise another round pretty soon.
Awesome. And I mean, yeah, I think people, as you know, it's like 60 or something percent of the internet is explicit content, as you say, like porn or
Yeah.
whatever. And I think, as an industry that we should really embrace these things in terms of like, this is what people want, right?
Hmm.
We shouldn't make people, if you have a million users, this is clearly fulfilling a need that people have, whether it's intimacy, even just companionship. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
people are lonely, and I think, you look at things like suicide rates, for example. I genuinely feel like something like this could help reduce things like that. And maybe that's like a far reach, but that's what I believe, because a lot of people maybe just they have a really hard time making that initial connection or that initial approach, and this almost makes that a lot easier for people.
Yeah, I think touching upon some of those points, like loneliness across the world is increasing. And I think with this newer generation that's younger, they're already interacting online without having met some of their friends ever in person, right? Like you look at how they find friends, it's like on online games like Roblox, Fortnite, League of Legends, in different communities like Discord, Telegram. And this is not just limited to crypto, right? This is like actually how the newer generation functions.
Yeah, dating especially.
Yeah, right. So I think like it is solving like a need where people are now finding just like entertainment online, right? And like whether it's from an AI, whether it's like from a friend that they've met, but haven't really met in person, it's kind of like all the same thing, right? You're just kind of like you're just more chronically online, so you might as well also have that sort of companionship. In terms of like how we think about building a successful company slash protocol, if you look at just recent times or just anything ever that was built, you've always just targeted like just the seven sins of man, right? Like, and that's by tapping into that, you actually tap into like deeper intrinsic nature on what people actually want. In this case, we have like references like Tinder and Hinge, right, which are like essentially lust and some sort of romance, right? Like people like to feel heard and appreciated. And on these online dating platforms, you do get that dopamine rush whenever you like match with someone, right? It's like, oh wow, that person's actually interested in me. The same way with this sort of companionship, you're kind of targeting that niche, right? Where it's like, okay, like we frequently kind of get these stories where, I actually don't interact with people, too much in person. This is the first time I've had a real conversation with someone of the opposite gender. And I've been able to like talk without being judged, all that sort of stuff, right? And people often come to us being like, I've actually found Nectar to kind of be a safe place to explore all these past traumas that I've had, kind of discuss things more openly with like a non-judgmental companion than someone else that I've known, but I kind of feel like ashamed of talking to, right? And it just kind of lifts this emotional weight off people's chest, and that like strikes really deeply, right? That's kind of why our users just love being on our platform. They've never left.
So I gotta ask, like, where does the name come from?
That's a great question. Maybe I'll reveal it one day, but I think it's a good name. It's slightly provocative, as
I
people
thought
would say. So
you
good name for a good niche.
go ahead and cut open a nectar, and you'll understand that. And why the anonymous?
Uh, I think it's fun, to be quite honest. I've interacted with a lot of people that have known me in the past, and then they don't know my non-personality. So it is interesting and engaging. I also think that when we were first building out Nectar, it was a lot different than what it is now. It's evolved over time, and I think building in an industry in the beginning that's super explicit lends itself to obviously some risks. Obviously now as we've expanded, it's more just kind of like something that I like to do, and relatively entertaining, I think.
I think it's cool too.
Cool.
You rock it. And I actually took Starlux here, so
Yeah,
it's
that's
good.
a real mask. It's actually an eye mask that I got.
Nice. Cool.
All on a budget.
Balling on a major budget. Starlux is nice though. Anyways, we're not Starlux promotion. Where do you see like the most kinds of, because you mentioned the pillars, what is the biggest pillar? Like where are you seeing the most, the fan fiction thing, where's the most attention happening?
I still think our core product has been generative companions. That's obviously the biggest one. I think we just kind of now segmented it into different categories. And we're now just kind of like A/B testing different product features that will impact each one, right? So for example, like to be quite frank, we haven't like put as much effort into like anime looking companions as we should have. Partially because a lot of the technology is different from just like hyper realistic, replication. One example I'll give is that it's very easy to do facial detection on like a human face, but once you try and do that same thing on an anime face and try and do like consistent facial reproducibility, it's actually much more difficult than people think. And if you can't get like good facial consistency, the immersion kind of breaks down, right? Because a very common request when you're kind of like talking with our companions, like, oh, like I want to see how you look, like, I wish I could see you in a red dress, and it'll send a photo back in a selfie form of like the companion like a red dress, right? But if the face looks off, then it just like, wait, that's not what I made, like, and then they kind of just leave the platform, right? So we've actually taken great care to like ship high quality products that are able to do that, and that's why we make all of our assets public if the creator chooses to do so. I think that's why we've seen a really big growth jump in like, realistic generative companions, and, moving forward into next year, focusing on that fan fiction where you can kind of do a little more. And also like the anime is something that we're exploring. So yeah.
Cool. And what made you decide to come to DevCon?
Well, I've always enjoyed meeting like-minded people like in crypto. I think DevCon historically, has some of the brightest minds. Everyone's usually out here. I'm a fan of Thailand. I've been here a couple of times, so always good to, link back up with friends and meet some new people. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for the fantastic interview. Do you have any closing thoughts you want to leave our audience?
Yeah, you guys should all check out Nectar. You can be the millionaire first user. I'm sure you'll like it.
I'm going to check it out. I'm very excited. So thank you.
Of course.
Appreciate it.
Anytime.
You guys are
Thanks so
awesome.
much.
Cheers.
Hey, what's up?
But it's not something Genzio is afraid of.
If you want to survive, you got to build a house.
No, we do not understand.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Get back at Genzio Media House.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us today.